Hello, my name is Matthew, and welcome to RuFaS Onboarding. In this video, we will talk about communications. By the end of this video, you should be able to understand the key difference between an issue and discussion, know how to make suggestions, and communicate effectively with our dev team and the subject matter experts. Also, you should be able to know how to follow the correct steps for contacting the RuFaS team. So let's dive into the guidelines. The README is a good starting place. It gives a general description of projects and points to resources for more detailed information. You can find the README by scrolling down the GitHub page. It begins with an overview of RuFaS. It says it's an open source model that simulates dairy farm production and environmental impact. For the vision and mission, it describes how RuFaS supports sustainable decision making and models key outputs like milk crops and emissions. Scientific Foundation notes that it's based on peer-reviewed research and open collaboration. And lastly, getting started lists the minimum steps to run RuFaS. All these sections includes hyperlinks for deeper exploration if you need more details. Next, we'll go to the RuFaS documentation. On the right side of the About section on GitHub, there is a link to the RuFaS documentation. The Welcome to RuFaS section provides a basic introduction and the initial steps for downloading and running the model. At the top of the section, there is also a scientific documentation. As you can see, here the documentation is organized by module in PDF format. You can open or download each file. Because of their size, they are harder to view directly on GitHub. So it would be better if you download these PDF files and read them. The Welcome to RuFaS section also includes more detailed explanation about the project and additional guidance for running the code. So the details here, we have graphs and description for each modules. Also, the additional guidance of codes is down below where it contains a lot more details. It's a good place to check if the README getting started steps aren't working. There are also detailed breakdowns of the code infrastructure, as you can see on the left. If you're interested in how the code works, each section provides helpful and valuable explanation and reference. I want to especially point out the command line sections. It shows available command functions and can be especially useful if you are just average user who just wants to run or test a model without diving too much into the code. Here is available options which could help you generate which helps you generate the outputs that meets your needs. Next, back to GitHub, we want to talk about discussions. The discussions are where community members share ideas, questions, and updates. There are several types of discussions. First is general. It's for open discussions. An example would be, how does everyone use RuFaS in their research? That could be a general discussion. Ideas type of discussions. An example would be, I think we can add another function for the crop and soil module. It's for suggestions and improvements. Polls, it's for community votes. An example for it would be which docstring format is easier to understand. Q&A is good for technical or setup questions. For example, how do I run RuFaS without stimulating the animals? Show and tell is for showing your work. And the example for it would be, I've created a tool that integrated RuFaS. Here's a link. You guys can take a look and tell me how you think. PR, or pull requests, are where you make changes and request them to be reviewed and merged into the dev branch. The video on PRs by Nico will provide more details on how this process works. Moving on to issue. An issue is a structured way to track a problem, task, or enhancement within the repository. There are several preset formats available, as shown here. The main idea of issue is to clearly describe what needs to be fixed or improved. We also link issues and pull requests so that every code change can be traced back to the problem or feature it addresses. This keeps development organized and make it easier to review and track progress. First, we will talk about discussions versus issues. First, let's cover discussion. A discussion is used for things like open-ended questions, suggestions, early ideas, or proposals that need initial feedback. It is ideal when the problem or solution is not yet clear. The purpose is to encourage brainstorming, different viewpoints, and consensus building. You should use it to ask for input on direction, potential risk, or alternative approach. Crucially, keep the tone collaborative. This is not for assigning tasks yet, so think of a discussion as the exploratory phase. Next, we have the issue. You create an issue when a problem is confirmed or a solution has been agreed upon. Issues are used to track actionable works like bugs, features, or documentation updates. They must have a clearly defined scope, expected outcome, and acceptance criteria. Because the work is defined, an issue is assignable to a team or contributor. It is usually created after a discussion has concluded, and the next step is execution. So the issue is also more like the execution phase. Next, we will talk about the steps to contact the team. So how do you put this into practice? Here are the recommended steps to contact the team. First, start by reviewing the wiki. It covers the code base and scientific context in a lot of details. You will most likely find your answers there. And then next, you should decide whether your topic is best suited for a discussion or an issue, using the criteria and the characteristics that we just covered. Then tag the most relevant team to ensure the right people are notified. If you're unsure which team to tag, it is still okay to proceed without a tag, as our members can direct it to the right team. Finally, and importantly, avoid emailing individuals directly unless prior steps don't resolve the matter. If the matter is unresolved after following these steps, or if it concerns logistics, collaboration, or privacy, then emailing team members is appropriate. In the README on the RuFaS GitHub page, you can locate the contact and email on the bottom.
Hello, my name is Nico, and welcome to RuFaS Onboarding. In this video, we will continue the discussion of the GitHub workflow for RuFaS by covering the basics of pull requests. By the end of this video, you will 1. Understand when to create a pull request, or PR. 2. Follow the steps to prepare a PR so it's ready for review. 3. Learn how to write a good description for a PR. 4. Practice responding to feedback and making updates to your PR. 5. Request reviews from RuFaS team members. And 6. Know what's required to get your PR approved and merged into the dev branch. We're going to start with GitHub issues. RuFaS uses GitHub issues to track current, upcoming, and past work done on the project. If you're going to make a PR, it is a best practice to either tie it to an existing open issue or to write up an issue describing what needs to be addressed. More on issues is discussed in earlier videos in this series. For this video, I will pretend we have an issue of creating a new property for our feed storages, which will be getting the total NDF for all the crops stored in a particular feed storage unit. Once you have an issue and are ready to address it, you will create a feature branch of the most up-to-date version of the RuFaS dev branch. A best practice is to name the new branch something relevant to the issue you are addressing. Here, because the issue I'm working on is creating a new property for the total NDF, I'm naming the feature branch add total NDF property. I personally use and enjoy VS Code as my IDE and use the command line interface to do my version control and branching. Other people on our team use PyCharm or the GitHub desktop app, and there are plenty of other options. Use whatever works best for you. Once in the new branch, we're going to make the changes to the code that best resolve the issue. This video is not focused on specific code writing, but as far as our general coding approach at RuFaS, we try to adhere to the Zen of Python guidelines and solid design principles, briefly outlined here, and with plenty written and discussed about them with a simple Google search. Back to our code changes. I'm keeping the commits atomic and adding them as I make them, and then committing the changes with an informative descriptive message. We will eventually want to push these changes to GitHub for review, but there are several key pieces to getting the code ready to push to GitHub. First, add unit test coverage for whatever changes you make to the code. We use the PyTest package and recommend using the coverage package to ensure all new and changed lines are fully covered by unit tests. Keep in mind that all existing tests must pass as well. I usually start by navigating to the specific test file for the module or modules to which I made changes. The structure of the test files closely mirrors the file structure of the main program. Over to the right here, I added a pretty straightforward unit test with all the appropriate docstrings and argument type hinting. After I've created the new test, I run the test suite to ensure the testing is all passing. As a final step here, I'll add and commit the changes to try and keep commits as atomic as possible, which helps for tracking any issues that come up. Next in the process, we use the MyPy type checker as our static type checker. This means properly typing functions and data structures. Any additions to the code must not add any MyPy warnings or errors to the overall code base. Additionally, we use Flake 8 as our linting tool. There should be no Flake 8 violations added with whatever code you're bringing to the code base. I created an intentional Flake 8 error here of some extraneous white space to show the fixing process. There are a couple of ways within VS Code to see this. First, on the left, we have the command line option. You can see it prints out a message exactly what the file line and error is along with a brief description. This also shows up in the VS Code Problems tab. Same exact diagnosis. Once we fix that, again, we'll add and commit those changes. One final note for this section before we push our code to GitHub. We use the NumPy format guidelines when writing and updating our doc strings. There is lots of documentation for that format available online. Once the code is ready, push the branch to GitHub and create a new PR. Again, whatever program you use to manage your branches and get your code to and from GitHub is fine to stay using as long as it works well for you. We're finally in GitHub. So now that we're there, you're going to navigate to the Pull Requests tab in the RuFaS repo. Here, you will click on the button prompting to compare and pull request your newly pushed code with the main dev branch to create a new PR. The first thing you'll want to fill out is the PR title. We also use bracket tags at the start to be able to search our PRs for changes that affect different parts of the RuFaS model. On the same screen, you'll see below the title the PR description box. We created a standardized RuFaS PR description form which guides you on what information is necessary. We'll go through each of these components a little more closely. Starting with the short summary of the changes in the PR. This is just a slightly expanded version of what's in the title. Next is a reference to the specific issue this PR will close. Again, all PRs should be tied to a specific issue. The issue number should go directly after the hashtag, no space. Moving down, we have three really important sections: the what, why, and how. For the what, we want to know what is accomplished in this PR. More detailed than the short summary of changes, you should get into the specific changes in the code that are included. The why section explains the reason the changes are needed. And finally, the how describes how the changes in the what section address and solve the issue, or answer the why. The next section is the test plan. This section explains how you tested your code to make sure it works. This is not just that you updated unit tests and that they're passing. This should show understanding of what changes your code implemented and how you know that they work. It could include any edge cases you accounted for, or filters that will help people analyze the results, or other ways to show that the changes you made address the issue the PR is closing. Next, there are two more important sections, inputs and outputs. They outline any changes in the PR to inputs and outputs. The output section is tied to the final section, which is a place to put any filters you have that can show expected changes to those outputs. You want this to be easy for reviewers to confirm the results you are saying your code changes make. Once this is complete, you can click the button to create the new PR. This will trigger the GitHub actions to run on the PR. The GitHub actions are a series of automated workflows that run with pushes to the codebase. They check and confirm things we've talked about earlier in the video, like that all the unit tests are passing, that there are no Flake 8 linting errors, and that the MyPy error count compared to the dev branch. Basically, this automates that the PR code quality is solid and ready for review. If any of these steps has failed, the GitHub action will automatically write a message on the PR listing the workflow steps that need to be addressed before the PR can be considered ready to merge into dev. You should wait for these actions to complete before taking the next step. One thing you will notice after the initial GitHub actions is that the actions will fail, and there will be a message letting you know the changelog needs to be updated. The changelog is a document that tracks the history of the changes made to RuFaS and groups them by release version number. Each PR will need to have a specific entry made that references the PR number, has a link to the PR, and a brief description noting whether there are input and output changes, as well as the RuFaS modules most affected by the changes and a brief one-sentence summary of the changes. Because you need the exact PR number to make the changelog entry, you won't know how to fully update the changelog entry until after you've created the PR. This is fine and normal, and you'll just need to go back and add this information to the changelog after the PR has been created, and then push that to the PR. Note, if you are not part of the RuFaS organization, these actions will not automatically run the GitHub actions for you. So you'll need to have a RuFaS team member manually trigger the actions for you. I'll talk more about that in the next section about requesting reviews. Here are some example messages from the RuFaS GitHub actions running and finding issues with the code. They give you instructions on what you'll need to do to fix the issues, or at least the general areas you'll need to work on, like fixing unit tests or Flake 8 errors. If there are any failing workflow actions, you should fix those issues locally and push the updated code to this PR, and then rerun the GitHub actions to ensure they are now passing. As I mentioned before, you'll also get a message about MyPy error count and how it compares with the error count currently in the codebase on the dev branch. The goal is to lower this number with each PR merged into the dev branch, or at the very least, not increase the error count. Again, this is not a deep dive coding video, so I won't go into specifically fixing the failed GitHub actions here, but the RuFaS team can certainly help out if there are any questions after you've looked at the messages and tried to make the fixes on your own. Once you have confirmed the actions are all passing, you should request a review. Over on the right-hand panel of the GitHub PR page, there is a section called Reviewers, which gives you a list of all the RuFaS team members. Ideally, at least one of those reviews should be from a member of the RuFaS software development team. If the PR deals with a specific scientific aspect of one of the biophysical modules, a subject matter expert for that biophysical module should also be tagged, or use one of the RuFaS GitHub team tags to tag that biophysical team. If you are an external collaborator with RuFaS, we're excited you're making contributions to the codebase, but you won't be able to assign specific reviewers to the code. And as noted earlier, you won't be able to trigger GitHub actions on your PR either. To get these processes moving, please go to the comments section of your PR and tag @devteam, and one of the members of the software development team will be notified and will respond and get the process moving for you. And now we're in the final stages. With reviews usually comes feedback. Sometimes it may be questions about your approach, why you did the things the way you did, suggestions for improvement, or sometimes bigger changes being requested if it doesn't seem like the code is resolving the issue properly, or the reviewer sees other potential big conflicts. This is a supportive, collaborative team and workspace where we all share the goal of having a clean and successful model that works for collaborators, scientists, and software developers alike. The feedback should be viewed through the lens of working together to try and make the best code it can possibly be. Once you've addressed all the review feedback and have gotten 2 approvals from RuFaS team members, you should have the GitHub actions run again and make sure all the actions are passing. This process will include merging in any recent changes from the dev branch before the final merging of the code into dev. To review, you should now have a better understanding of the following objectives: understanding when to create a pull request, following the steps to prepare a pull request so it's ready for review, learning how to write a good description for that pull request, practicing responding to feedback and making updates, requesting reviews from RuFaS team members, and knowing what's required to get that PR approved and then eventually merged into the dev branch. It was great working with you today. As always, if you have further questions, please review the RuFaS documentation at the link below or start a discussion topic on the RuFaS GitHub page. Thanks a lot.